Mike Ferrin, friend of the show, so kind to our listeners here in San Diego. MLB Network Radio back with us on Jon and Jim. Offseason is here, Mike. But before we get to free agency, you've watched a lot of baseball, okay? The fifth inning, to cry over spilled milk here in San Diego, we'll do it all offseason. We haven't really talked a lot about it. We were off one day because of the Aztecs had a football game. But, like, what are the odds an inning plays out like that defensively? You know what I mean? Like, watching all the games we've watched, it's kind of like a 1 in a million inning, isn't it? The way it was defended or poorly played by the Yankees. Like, how do you quantify what happened there?
Yeah, it was really weird. I mean, it's not like, listen, Aaron Judge plays a really good center field for a guy who's 6'7", 285, right? Mm-hmm. It was weird to see a ball hit right at him that he dropped. I know it was kind of knuckling on him, but that was strange. I think the Volpe error is the most understandable because Kike Hernandez basically did to Volpe what Manny Machado did to Freddie Freeman, and that he took a route to try and alter the throw and did. And so it was a one-hop throw and couldn't handle it. And then Cole just not covering first base was really strange. And still, like, they can get out of that inning down 5-1, right? Like, it's second and third and 2 outs at that point. So it was a weird implosion. I'm a big fan of the idea that it was the curse of Fat Joe, right? Like, they had an I don't know if you guys caught this, but like, they had an in-stadium message in the fourth inning from Fat Joe, like trying to rile up the fans.
Did not know that.
And, yeah, it was like one of those things where it was like Kike Hernandez said it at the parade. He was like, that came on the screen, and we were like, let's go. That was the rally. And so, yeah, I mean, a very, very strange inning. But listen, I thought the Dodgers were the better team. I think they clearly earned it. I don't know that this is the best Dodger team that they've had in this, incredible run of success that they've had. But they were the one that ended up taking home the trophy at the end. And they played, after they got through that Padres series. I mean, that was a 6-game series against the Mets where nothing was close. I mean, even with 2 blowout losses, they outscored the Mets by 3 runs a game. That was a mismatch. And then they did the little things better than New York did.
And as we move to free agency now, after the game 5 in New York, the Juan Soto press conference where he basically announced to the whole world, I'm up for business. Whoever has the highest offer, essentially, like, I'll be listening. And he is going to be the number 1 free agent this offseason. Are you believing these numbers that people are throwing out there? Like, it starts at 600, could go to 700. Like, are you believing that could be the realistic number that Soto could get in free agency?
I'm not sure that I buy 700, but I think 6 is within range. And I think the Padres kind of opened the door for this with some of the longer, 12-year deals that they've offered, or 11-year deals, over the course of the last several years. I expect Soto to beat the present day value of Ohtani's contract, which, depending on how you look at it, it's somewhere between $43 and $46 million a year. And that number starts to add up really quick, right? So, we do the math real easy, right? 46 times 10 is 460. Well, you start adding on, 2 more years to that, and all of a sudden you're up over $550 million. And let's say it's a 14-year deal in the end, then you're over 600. And so that's where I think those numbers come from. And it will probably be, I would guess somewhere in that 40, somewhere between $45 and $48 million a year for, somewhere around 11 or 12 to 15 years. And when you start adding those numbers together, you start to see that, man, that's a huge total. So, yeah, I am kind of buying it, but I still think 700 is probably a little bit outside the bounds, just because, like, Soto's a superstar, don't get me wrong. And I think, some of the reporting that's come out here about how, they were making progress before Peter Seidler fell ill on extension with San Diego, I think is really interesting because he is a superstar player, but I don't think he's the draw that Shohei Ohtani is. And so I think it probably comes in below the total value of that contract, but above the present day value.
So do you have a prediction now for potentially, like, who's going to give him that contract?
Yankees. I think in the end, the Yankees and Mets are going to be the two that are the heaviest in there. I think the Yankees have a pretty great need. I'm hard pressed to see him taking off the Yankee pinstripes. Generally, if the Yankees want a player, they really want a player, they don't lose him. So I'm going to say Yankees until proven otherwise.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Mike Ferrin, MLB Network Radio, back with us here on Jon and Jim. Switching gears to the Padres, they've got a number of players from the 2024 team that paid dividends. I mean, the Padres obviously had a very good year, and now they got to make decisions like, can they get them back as free agents? I know they didn't offer qualifying offers to like a Jurickson Profar, a Hassan Kim. They had a catcher in Kyle Higashioka who had a very nice year. Out of that group, I mean, Profar, Kim, Higashioka, could you see any, all, some of them back? How do you see that playing out this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think Profar is a good bet to return just because things have gone so well for him there.
Yep.
I don't know that you can expect the same level of production that you got this year from him, but I think, something that's certainly north of the $1 million deal that he had last year, but maybe more in that 3 and 30 range would make sense. They need a shortstop. I mean, I really think, they could play Bogarts there and they could play Cronenworth at second and Arise at first, but it's not the best defensive alignment because Bogarts just isn't a great shortstop. He's better suited for another position. So I could see them, like Kim would be a guy that you would probably get on a little bit lower base, higher incentive deal if you wanted to bring him back just because he's coming off shoulder surgery. And I'm not even sure if he's going to be ready for opening day. The problem is that the market for shortstops is really thin because other than him, it's Willy Adames, who is probably going to cost a number that this Padres ownership group isn't willing to go to for an everyday shortstop. And I think that there are teams that have more pressing needs, like the Giants, who will probably spend more to be able to get him. So, and then you have to start looking at, what are the trade options at shortstop? And it's not a great list, but I'm sure that they can probably try and look that direction if they want. And catcher, the market got a little bit better with Travis d'Arnaud on it. I mean, he did not have a good second half, and he's 36. But, Luis Campusano is still there, and then Campusano has some good offensive upside, and I think that there's ways that they can piece it together. I don't think Ethan Salas and Leodalis DeVries are going to play factors on the 2025 team. I mean, as much as they're cool with moving guys a la Jackson Merrill really quickly, I just don't think that that's going to be quite it. I mean, DeVries is like the second youngest player in the history of the fall league. And he's been okay out here, but it's not like it's, there's nothing in his stat line that tells you he's ready for the big leagues yet. He put up a decent year in Elsinore, especially when you consider he's 17 years old. But I think there's probably some more refinement that needs to come. So you're looking at external, additions at probably 3 positions and at least another starting pitcher for depth with the Joe Musgrove injury. So they have some work to do, and I don't have a clear idea of what their budget's going to look like yet. Hopefully they have a little bit of flexibility, but they're right at the luxury tax line as it is. And, we saw how much they wanted to reduce payroll last year, and things are probably a little better after hosting a couple of playoff games, but I can't imagine that they're going to go back and spend like they did when Peter Seidler was alive.
Yeah. And, going forward now here, Mike, with the Dodgers winning the World Series this past year, I mean, it feels like everything that the Padres do needs to be focused on how do we get over the hump of the Dodgers now? How do we get past them? How do we get to a World Series? How do we win a World Series? And like philosophically thinking about it here, if you can't spend the money and you got to try to get on the edges here, like what's the play? Because you can't just expect all of a sudden to just have that 1 year where you get over the Dodgers, because the Dodgers aren't stopping. Like Roki Suzuki's out there. Like Willy Adames is another name that's linked to the Dodgers. Like Dodgers aren't stopping. So the Padres, like, how is this going to work out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, with the Suzuki thing, if he does get posted, he's still under the age of 23. So it'll work like Ohtani, where he would be part of the amateur budget, right? And those reset on January 15th. So it's not like the Dodgers have, a huge advantage. In fact, they're at a disadvantage compared to some other teams as to how much they can spend internationally. So I don't know that necessarily fits there. I would look at it a little different, though. And I think, listen, it was just 2 years ago that the Padres got by the Dodgers in the playoffs, right? They lost to the Phillies in the league championship series. you just got to qualify for the postseason, and then anything can happen. Now, would you prefer to have the bye? I'll always argue yes, that you should. And I think, we finally saw this year where 3 of the 4 LCS teams were teams that had the byes. But I think it's less about like pulling your hair out over how do we beat the Dodgers over the course of 162 games and then again in the postseason, as it is you need to qualify for the playoffs. And then whatever happens, happens. And that's a really uncomfortable spot to be in that you kind of leave yourself up to the fates of the gods. But as long as you do things like, cover first base on a squibber to first,
Right.
like you probably put yourself in pretty good shape. And so I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we've talked about it before, right? That Diamondbacks team last year was not really good, and they won the National League pennant. So, all you have to do is be one of the 6 teams that gets into the tournament, and you have a chance.
No doubt about it. Mike, before you go, final one from me, just on, you mentioned starting pitching as a need. Of course it is basically for all teams, but without Joe Musgrove. Looking at some of these names, again, the Padres aren't going to be in on the top line free agent starters, you wouldn't think, because of their payroll constraints. But like guys like Frankie Montas or Nick Pivetta, or even a former Padre, Nick Martinez, are those the types of names we would be talking about? Are there others out there potentially when you look at it kind of first blush to begin free agency?
Well, ordinarily, I would say, on those last 2, but both of them got qualifying offers.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Yep.
Which is really interesting, right? I think that means that, both teams are willing to have them back at $21 million or whatever it is for 1 year, or 23, I can't remember what the qualifying offer number is off the top of my head. But I think that's super interesting. There could be some other names. I think a guy that's worth considering for a number of teams, and granted, he may not be ready right at the beginning of the year, but Shane Bieber is a former Cy Young Award winner who's, coming off Tommy John surgery and looked really good before he got hurt last year. That's a guy who's a perfect fit for a low base, high incentive contract. And, I think the Padres are in a little better shape. Well, actually, they're in a lot better shape pitching-wise than they were at the same point a year ago. Randy Vasquez did a pretty good job when they needed him to. And obviously, Cease has been great. He's heading to free agency. Matt Waldron can be a perfectly cromulent back-end starter as a knuckleballer, right? They're just in a little better position than they were a year ago. So that's helpful, too, that they don't necessarily need to go out and make that big splash move. Now, I know A.J. Preller never met a big move that he didn't like making, and maybe he will, still add somebody that they can control for a number of years who can anchor that rotation. But I think that there are some potential players that are out there maybe on 1-year deals that could be helpful.
Mike, we always appreciate it, man. Great insight, perspective. Free agency underway, 2025 on its way as well. Never ends. Mike Ferrin, MLB Network Radio. Mike, let's do it again soon, and thanks for hopping on, all right?
Thanks, Mike.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, take care, Mike Ferrin. Jim said thanks, but his mic was off.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah,
That's great.